over to you.
Now.
Yeah. Whenever you want.
I'm Nick, I'm an addict. First, just want to say what an honour it is to be asked to do this first share here. I was delighted to be asked. And I've also come here with trepidation. I haven't spoken for ages and ages, and so it's a big deal. And I've learned over the years, if I ever try to rehearse anything or think about, it's different if you're given a step or a topic, it's different. But when it's like this, I'm better just kind of, I was going to say freebasing it, but that's the wrong term. So I'm better just busting it and just going with what comes up. And so, yeah, it's an honour to be here. I'm 36 years clean and sober. And it feels like yesterday. It feels, and the more time has passed, wherever I've been and wherever I've encountered, I've never experienced the kind of fierce democracy I experience in this room. There's something about, we all know, if I organised a meeting, I'd only have certain people would be there, and it would be shit, within there. And I think that's the thing is, there's something about this open door, and the fact that we come up with all our, but not you,
debatable.
It wasn't. Ross said to me before, do you think that's control? And I said, sometimes control gets a bad press. We need control, otherwise there'd be chaos. Like all these things, we need the organisation. But it's this as a place, it brings up my stuff when I listen to other people. I've left these meetings angry, happy, joyous, sad. But the thing that's always prevailed when I've left a meeting is I've felt human, And often in my own isolation out there on the street, the grandiosity starts. I've decided what to do if I rule the world, or all that sort of stuff. Or that guy bumped into me, or why didn't he step aside? There's all that sort of aggression and all that goes on. And in the sense, I've got better with all that stuff. But more I look back on my life, that rage and the judgmentalness, he, she, them, or it. It's always other people, and very childlike, in your kind of fear of being in the wrong or anything like that, so I'd rather unload it onto somebody else. And this is a place where, I work as a therapist. I'm trained as a psychoanalytic psychotherapist. And what's really exciting about this, often with 12-step, I'm working in 12-step in so-called field as well, is that there's often this insecurity, professional insecurity around, that it's a bit folksy this, or it's got a higher power and all that sort of stuff. The more I've engaged with psychoanalysis, this is the closest thing. This is a dead ringer for psychoanalysis, what we do in these rooms with sponsors and working through the steps, but the collective of it, as I say, the fierce democracy of it, the I can't, we can. I haven't encountered that anywhere else. And when I meet other therapists, everybody craves this kind of society, this microcosm of society. The Labour Party do, and that. We can all see what the aspiration is. We actually have it here, even the secretary does whatever 6 months or a year, and then they're deposed. When I first came around, I used to go to Chelsea meetings because I was in a halfway house in Clapham. And being in Chelsea, I was going from, I still felt like I had a psychic shell suit on, or when I spoke, I didn't hear. I heard somebody going, "All right, man, how are you?" This scouse sort of scramble coming out of my mouth. And I remember walking along the King's Road through a meeting with other people from the halfway house. And there was kind of Lord Snooty of Oxfordshire there was somebody else, there was some semi-gangster. So it was that amazing cross-section of people you get in halfway houses. And I couldn't even walk along the street with other people. I was 6 weeks clean or whatever. I felt awkward. I felt ill-clad. The others seemed to have decent clobber on and all that. And mine was a bit shabby. And all that shame and all that sort of stuff. But it was the collective, even if I wasn't walking with them, it was the collective that carried me along. I've said it before, but when I came in, I went to buy a pair of shoes when I was in the halfway house. We worked in a video shop, and the video shop wouldn't pay us. And it was a sort of an ethical video shop, so they brought in loads of art films and all that. It was the woman's son was an addict, so she was trying to set up something that people would appreciate and bring in decent films and all that. And then the money would get paid into a trust, so you could go and buy an article of clothing or whatever. And I remember going along in Battersea Park Road or one of them. There was like an Army and Navy store, that kind of like a Millets or a Blacks or whatever. And I went in there to get a pair of shoes, and the guy said, I wanted to get a pair of those sort of Romanian, like big T boots, those sort of ones. And the guy said, what size do you take? And I didn't know. I actually didn't know what size shoes I took. So I went, I tried a pair on, and that people-pleasing thing. I said to the guy had like a cut here tattoo. He was just, there was no human being stuff with him. There was no like empathy or anything like that. He just said, oh damn, like that. And I went, oh yeah, they're good. I walked out of the shop with this pair of shoes about this big. I got back to the halfway house. I put them on. And I came into the television room. Everyone was sitting watching telly, and I said, how did these look? And one guy just creased up on his shirt, that full on. When you think of the sort of, you usually imagine these embarrassments, but this was real. And I remember the kind of looking down at these clowns that had suddenly, transformed into some Disney fucking big curved things. And the guy said, I said, I don't know what to do. He said, I'll tell you what to do. You go back to the shop and you say to the guy, I want to try a pair on. I don't know what size, there's no shame in that. And that's what I did. I was accompanied by about 4 people from the house for moral support. But I went back. But it was it's so powerful to me, that fear of actually saying what your needs are. Saying to the guy, I don't know. And it not being, because I don't know, that's all. It doesn't mean I'm a bad person or anything like that. But I was so crippled with all that stuff and that shame and about clothes, about my appearance. We went to... walking along the King's Road, we had an NA dance, and people were saying, it's like when people say, go to coffee after the meetings, it's really good. I'd go, oh, it's really good, it compounds what you've learnt in the meeting, and there's a bit more fellowship and that. I went to some Hampstead meetings, and I went for coffee afterwards. The guy with me was flirting with the other people there, they all seemed to know each other, it was cliquey, I was just there, like, suddenly, you like Casper Hauser or something, some geezer just sitting on the end. And when I tried to say something, everyone looked a bit perplexed or bewildered, so. So I thought, I'm not going to do that anymore. I'll avoid the so-called, this wonderful sort of bonhomie and camaraderie of afterwards. But this night, we went to this NA dance. You'll love the NA dance, it's fucking great. Got in the NA dance, and I felt really, it was like being back at school. Those school dances you go to and all that, where you're on the edge and should be dancing with these, hang on, let's have another drink first, or let's, and that real woodenness that comes, any fluency disappears. And somebody said, don't just stand there, just start dancing, get in the lights and start. Then it'll all go, you'll be fluent, you'll be Isadora Duncan, you'll just be in the mix and it'll be wonderful. And eventually I lurched onto the dance floor. I had these cowboy boots on that someone had given me when I was using, I said to this other guy from the halfway house, this posh guy, and he said, I said, what do you think of these cowboy boots? And he said, they may be okay in the Klondike, brother, he said, but they don't quite hack it on the King's Road. And so I sort of lurched onto the dance floor with these clip-clopping boots and just immediately felt, really kind of awkward and robotic, and no one was near. People were moving. It felt like people were moving away. I mean, this is all in my own head, and then couldn't get out. I could almost hear sort of psychic voices shouting from some parallel universe. Nick, save yourself! Come away! Come away from the lights. It was that kind of feeling. And eventually, I kind of tumbled back out and thought. I said to this guy, I thought you said it'd be better if you danced. But weirdly, by the end of the night, I was dancing. All that stuff had gone. So it's about going through those terrible kind of self-conscious, embarrassing moments and realising, and also this other guy with me said, something, all this sort of centre of attention stuff, like, oh, what will they think of my boots, or this, or, oh God, the way that guy looked at my collar on my shirt, that mad stuff that you have when you're in adolescence and you've got your Ben Sherman on or whatever it is, or you might be slightly wrong in your fashion choices. He said, it's an arrogance. No one gives a fuck about you. No one's interested in you. You know what I mean? They're interested in them. Especially as an NA dance. Everyone's preoccupied with them. Or do I look like you? It's they've got no time to kind of... It's nice when there's a scapegoat you can focus on. But mostly, we're preoccupied with ourselves. The chorus of voices in the head, that sort of Greek chorus we carry around with us, is loud for everybody. And it's taken me kind of years to start. And each time you go through one of those things, you never go back. Yeah, there are times when I've been in situations where I felt socially inept, or felt my accent doesn't quite fit and all that. But it doesn't have the same, it doesn't govern. It might inform from the shadows, or I might get that slight thing about who I am or where I'm from or whatever. But it doesn't command. You know what I mean? It's lost its power in that way. One of my mates said, we were doing some kind of group work and that, he said those voices in your head, that are saying that your trousers don't fit or oh, listen to his voice, it's dead squeaky, or whatever it is. He said, I've still got them. He said, they never go away, even after many years in recovery. He said, but now, he said, they're bound and gagged in about 2 rooms away going, look at his shoes, or whatever it is. But they're kind of muffled. The ghosts are kind of slowly exorcised and disappear to the periphery, which is nice. I mean, I couldn't begin. The journey, I still think more and more, when you think about people getting clean, that first thing, and how it comes to pass, I still think it's a miracle. There's no doubt about it. I even when I'm talking to other people who are using and all that, and I think it's because when you're in that place where the only thing that works is that, even when it stopped working, I know that with me, it was the last few years, the only thing that worked with my using was the withdrawals. The actual thing, it didn't quite hit the trick. There might be a fleeting moment when you think, oh, that's better, and people, you'd always get people sitting around. I still remember people saying, the gear's declined. You like old colonels going, yes, the gear has, the quality has gone down over recent years. The gear hasn't changed at all, but it's at its shelf life. It doesn't work anymore. But what do you do when it doesn't work? And your whole reality, it's like Narcissus in Ovid. He's locked into the pool, locked to his reflection. He's in love. He's totally enthralled to his own reflection. And there's a point in Ovid where he says, I see my fate. He knows. He knows he's caught. He knows he's stuck in the addiction of that, as we call narcissism now. He knows he's stuck. And he says, and there's nothing I can do. And I think when I'm in that using place, any intervention, like people coming up, have you ever thought, I mean, we've all had family members and all that trying to help us. When you're in that place, everything else is ghostly. Those voices from outside, people trying to help you. And of course, it just compounds the shame, because they've said, we'll give you another chance, or people are being, really generous with you and all that, and people were generous with me. And I just could see no way out whatsoever, And then I went to one of these meetings. It was in the probation office in Stoke Newington. It was a basement. I was on a methadone script, and I've said this loads of times, but I'll say it again because it's. There was a secretary. There was a woman doing the share. The woman did the share. It was the most depressing thing you've ever heard. It was like the horrors of this woman's life was like beyond anything. And the secretary, when she finished, the secretary said, I was depressed when I came in here. After listening to you, I'm fucking suicidal. That was my first introduction to meetings. But here's the weird part of it. It actually felt all right. You know what I mean? It felt better than standing in the pub going, oh yeah, I'm just back from Spain, or I've just been to Mars. All that way you're looking past people, but nobody ever really connects. And I walked with them all afterwards. I think I bought a can of special brew in the off-licence. I didn't even know, you know what I mean? And one of them said, you're going to die. And I thought, they're a bit dramatic, this lot. It's a bit melodramatic. But something happened to me in that meeting, even though it was a month or so before I actually, and then I went off to a treatment place and they stopped my methadone. I didn't stop and this is another good thing. I picked up my methadone on the Holloway Road, and the day I had to go into treatment, I looked at my watch, and it was a dead tight thing getting to the chemist and then getting to catch the train to go to the treatment centre. And I just thought, I haven't got it in me, I can't be arsed getting the methadone, It's either... And so I went without, and there was those few days where I think, why didn't I get that last script, But it was really empowering once the thing, because that was a choice I'd made, and suddenly I was in the place. And immediately I was surrounded by other addicts, was even the withdrawals. I remember hitting my knees. There was an old sort of decommissioned chapel in this treatment centre, and I was down in the chapel, I was on my hands and knees, and I was praying for the obsession to be lifted. I didn't even know those words then. I just wanted the pain to be taken away. And it was like these treatment centres, a bit like the halfway house. There was a guy in the room with me. I was on the clinical floor, the withdrawing floor. And the guy next to me was brought. I was there, when you're rolling on your bed, sort of bare mattress almost, and every time I turned over, I'd go, oh, why didn't I do that 3 hours ago? I'm okay. It would be bliss for 5 seconds, and then the withdrawals would kick in again, And there was another guy there. He was like a Portuguese count who'd had some terrible, huge habit because he had, untold wealth. So he was there, and he had that kind of jutting beard out of a medieval portrait or something. He was an aristocrat. He looked the part, like he was sort of that he'd taken out of a painting, and he was praying sincerely to God to take away his terrible withdrawals. You know, he was contorted by. And I was thinking, well, I'm not as bad as him. You know? Sometimes it's not Schadenfreude, but sometimes it helps to see somebody else. You know, there's something about that. And you know, a few days later, we were chatting and having coffee, and we were clean. You know, but I'll never forget the camaraderie of it, the sense of it, and that I had in the meetings before I went there. When I came back from there, I've never not gone to meetings. I've done less of latter years, but I always leave feeling saner, and you know, my first sponsor, he was a you know, when you're in a room like this in a halfway house and you're saying, I wonder what happened to whoever, Elvis Presley, whatever it is, and I mentioned some old musician. And the guy fixing the radiator said, that's me, you know. And he was in there, recovering addict, fixing the radiator. So he became my sponsor. And me and him, he said to me from the beginning, he said, I've kind of got a handle on steps 1, 2, and 3. 5 minutes. Yeah, okay. I'll say this. I used to go into doctor's surgeries to get Dycanol, and the guy would say, I've got a terrible migraine, you know, and the only thing that works is a thing called and he'd come out with all names of migraine. I'd go, no, I don't think that. Dycanol, Dycanol, that's it, I remember that. And as soon as I said that, the doctor would say, yes, I thought you'd ask for that because you're an addict, and if you don't leave my surgery within the next 5 minutes, I'll call the police. And I'd say you're a very perspicacious or whatever, some word like that, some Victorian word. You're a very astute doctor, you know, your Hippocratic oath, and you've seen through my, you know, my rough guise kind of thing. And but if you could just see your way clear to write a script, even if it's for 10 or something like that, I'll never darken your door again, you know. And as he's reaching, you'd see his shoulders collapse as he was defeated. All his training and everything was as nothing before the demonic power of active addiction. You know, I'd be there with like big long pointed ears, going, if you could just, you know, right, helping him write it, you know, with a quill, you know. I'm saying if you could make it 60, that would keep me away a bit longer. You know. Next Tuesday I'd be back there knocking on his door again. But so the 5 minutes, it always triggers that thing of like, yeah, I'll accept that 5 minutes, you know, half an hour later. No, I am going to stop. But no, yeah, I'm just very grateful for being here, and I've had all kinds of things in recovery. A lot of them I've been the author of, you know, my own difficulties. Some of it's been outside stuff and all that, illness and all the rest of it. But as I said when I started, it feels like yesterday when I walked into that first meeting. And the meetings have never failed me, you know. And with all the sort of occasional controversies in meetings and all, there's nowhere like this on earth. That there's no other place where you can walk in, be welcomed, and I don't have to kind of perform or be, because I'll do that performing thing. We all do that. We all have our sort of our shtick kind of thing, but it's a place where I can just come in and sit silent. I went to a meeting recently, and I just sat there. It was a meeting I hadn't been to before. I didn't know anybody there, and it was just the silence of that, and the anonymity and the pleasure just to be in somewhere and just go. You suddenly realise how much you're carrying. You know, you walk in and and slowly kind of decompress. Anyway, I have rambled on, but that's me. Thank you.
Thank you, Nick. Oops, Nick. Yeah, I'm Ros. I'm an addict. Thank you.